Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Power of the Truth podcast. Today's episode is with a very special lady called Niky Hamilton. Now, I must just start by saying that this episode does contain conversations around miscarriage, stillbirth and grief and deep loss. So if this would trigger you, please proceed with caution and know that there is information in the show notes if you need support or help, or indeed you want to reach out to Niky directly. It's a really special conversation and one very close to my heart, which will become clearer in the episode as it goes along. But another amazing truth story from somebody who has lived through the unimaginable. I really hope you enjoy listening to Niky and everything she has to say. She's an inspirational lady. And please do subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. And do drop me a comment, let me know if you enjoy it. And send me a message if you have any ideas for guests or anyone you'd like to hear speak about a specific subject. Thank you so much for listening, and I really hope you enjoy this episode. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome onto the Power of the Truth podcast, Niky Hamilton. Okay, good morning to today's guest. Thank you so much for being here, Niky.
Thank you so much for inviting me along, friends. Really nice to be here. And
You're welcome. You're in Australia, so it's 8 a.m. here for me, and it's, what did you say, 5 p.m. for you?
5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon right now. So yes, it's the end of the week for me.
Amazing. What a way to finish your week.
I get to have a great conversation. It's actually really nice. I really enjoy it. So thank you.
You're welcome. So for the benefit of my lovely listeners, would you please tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, who I am. I call myself a women's resilience coach or a resilient leadership coach. I'm trained as a physiotherapist, but after navigating significant setbacks in my own life, I've ended up retraining and now work to help women navigate their way through life's messy middle moments to build clear minds and open hearts and calm confidence through sometimes life's most difficult times.
Yeah. So tell me what brought you to this work. So you obviously mentioned that you've had a significant thing that happened to you. So talk to us about what led you to this work. Because you were a physiotherapist originally, weren't you?
Well, I was, and I've worked as a physio for 20 years now. But my significant, I guess, life moment for me happened 12 years ago now. And at that time in my life, I was the sort of person who was confident, ambitious. I was a physio running my own business. I was running events and conferences around Australia. I was the sort of person who thought, if you have a bad day, just take a vitamin B, go for a run, you'll be fine. And I was the sort of person who really thought that nothing in life could go wrong until it did. Back in February 2014, when my husband and I navigated a parent's worst nightmare and our son, Baxter, passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. And I found myself really transformed from this super confident person to literally a shell of my former self. I struggled with brain fog, with an emotional roller coaster I can't even begin to describe. I struggled with self-blame, like what kind of mother am I to have not somehow prevented this? I really felt like I was at the bottom of the ocean looking up to the surface and wondering if I'd ever breathe again. And I lived in that space for a very long time. And I knew I missed everything about what I thought would happen in my life, but at that time I also missed myself. Like I couldn't recognize myself in the mirror anymore. I just became this completely different person. And it was it was months and months. Of course, it's taken years to navigate through, but it was months that I was in that space of really barely leaving the house. When I received a phone call from a close friend, and she said to me, Niky, I know you're really struggling. I don't know how to help you. And I'm thinking, I don't know how to help me either. I'd been seeing psychologists and counselors, telling my story, but I felt like I didn't feel like I was getting anywhere. My grief was so deep, I just didn't feel like I was ever going to recover. And so she said to me, look, I'd really like to help you in some way. I want to invite you on my yoga retreat I'm about to run in Bali. Please come. I want to gift it to you. You just need to buy your flights. Now, I've never been offered anything so generous before in my life, like a free holiday. But do you know what my first response to that was? It was, oh, no, I don't know if I can do that. I'm scared. What if I cry? What if I have to meet other women? What if, can a grieving mother really go on a holiday? Like, is this allowed? And I just had so many apprehensions. And so I originally said no. And I finished the conversation and reflected after that phone call, what sort of person says no to a free holiday? Like, really? And I reflected that there were two things. One thing for me was that I had spent my life giving to other people, giving to my business, giving to my patients, giving to my mum and my dad, like making sure everyone's okay. It felt really strange to receive. Like this foreign concept of being able to receive something, a gift like that. The other big hurdle that I realized that was causing me to say no was the self-blame story. Like if I'd just changed one thing, if I'd just seen a different doctor, if I'd just listened to my heart, if I'd just spoken up, if I just, and with that self-blame comes the idea of, well, it's all my fault and I don't deserve it. And it was right at that time, scrolling through social media, and sometimes social media is magic because it actually sent me a quote by this man called Dr. DeMartini, who I've subsequently trained under. And that quote read, whatever you have or have not done, you're worthy of love. And something within that quote really shifted me because it was the realization that whatever I've done, whatever I haven't done, however I've landed here in this big, deep hole, however it's happened, I'm still worthy of love. And I knew at that point I needed to make a choice. I was either going to stay here in my house, sitting on the couch for the rest of my life. My health was suffering, my business was suffering, my relationship was going to suffer next, or I was going to give myself permission for the first time to receive and have the courage to say yes to something that I was a little scared of. But I knew if I didn't make a change, that nothing in my life would change. So I called my friend back and I said to her, I feel silly, but I want to say yes. I know I've said no, but can I say yes? And she said, of course. So I went on that retreat and was I scared? Yes, I was. I was very apprehensive leaving the house and hopping on a plane and all of these things. But in the end, that retreat was the first best step I'd taken because it was right there that I asked, what do I really need to be able to start moving forward in my life? I need to figure out how to calm emotions because I'm on a roller coaster right now. I need to figure out how to manage stress. I need to figure out how to put my life together and find direction again when it feels like it's a ticked out jigsaw puzzle. And so that's what prompted me when I came back to retrain. I ended up doing almost every course known to man on nervous system regulation, on emotional health, and it opened up a whole new world for me. And I ended up, I guess, putting together steps for myself to find my way through, to be able to create a life despite the mess of it. And so that's how I've ended up in the space of coaching. And like I said, I like to call it resilience coaching rather than grief coaching because it is about building resilience. And resilience is not bouncing back. Like I thought I'd bounce back to who I was. I've never been the person who I was. That person's gone. Resilience is really the heart's courageous choice to transform. And that's what I now do. A space of years now, I've created these steps that have ended up helping a lot of people. So that's how I've landed in the space of resilience coaching and retreats and that sort of thing.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing. I find it so interesting how these big events, these big life events trigger the need to want to serve others in a bigger way. Because when you go through something so transformational, like losing a child, for example, or there's lots of things, aren't there, that trigger people into these spaces. But the need to help other people work through these things in a way that you didn't feel supported when it happened to you, ultimately.
I did, like I said, I did have counselling, I did have psychology, and that was helpful to a degree, but I just found myself in a space of like, what next? What now?
Yeah.
True.
And I think lots of women get to that point at some point anyway, don't they? Throughout life, whether it's post-children, perimenopause, menopause, post-divorce, post-losing your parents, all these different huge life events that happen. Even if you don't have some crazy big life moment that changes you forever, like losing a child, we all go through these pivot moments. Certainly, I feel like I've lived several lives already in my 46 years, and there's been lots of pivots and shifts and changes because I've had to, because my circumstances have changed, and we've got to not hold on to the shame of the change, haven't we? It's not a failure, it's just a pivot. It's a redirection, it's a growth, but it's hard to see that when you're in the thick of it, isn't it, sometimes?
And I think I agree with that. And I've often said that, like, the women I work with, I believe that grief comes in many faces and forms. It's not just someone passing away. It's a divorce, it's the family breakdown, it's a change in your health, it's a career change. It's looking at life and realizing this is not what I planned. And now what? And so we often will I call it sitting in the dirt for a while, or sitting in the ditch for a while. I think you need to sit in the ditch for a while just to gather your energy and figure out what next. But eventually we get tired of being there, and it's like, okay, we need to make a decision now. Do I stay here in that sense of in the injustice of it all, or do I decide to now make a change? And then how do I do that? So that's the place that I found myself in, is that, yes, I was receiving support groups and all of the things, and I'm forever grateful for that. And I eventually reached a point where it's like, I need to recreate my life now. And it is ultimately a recreation, and it's the hard thing for me. It was completely unexpected recreation, but I have a feeling that most recreations do trigger from an unexpected moment.
Agreed. Yeah. So talk to me about Baxter. So tell me, what did life look like before Baxter? So you were just newly married, were you? Or
No, we'd been married for, oh gee, now you're going to test me, at least 5 years. And so life looked like I had my own business as a physio. I was flying up and down the country teaching on physio courses. I loved teaching, so I was very fulfilled in that. We became pregnant, which was very exciting and also very daunting for anyone that's been pregnant for the first time. It's a daunting thing, but also exciting. And we were in a space of joy. Like I said, we were the sort of people, and I think a lot of us are, the sort of people that can sometimes think that, look, life adversities happen, it's just not us. It's always going to be someone else, And for us, we realized that it's not always someone else, and it is sometimes faced with us. And what happened to us is that I was full-term pregnant. Actually, I was 2 or 3 days overdue, and I, that afternoon, had thought to myself, I don't feel a lot of movement, but I've been told that that's normal, so don't worry about it. And I'm going to share this story, and I've actually not shared it with anyone, but it's this sense of like, something's wrong, but you don't want to listen to that. It's an underlying intuition. And here's what happened. My husband and I walked along the beach. This is at sunset on that evening, and the full moon was rising on the water. And as the full moon was rising, the reflection of the moon was coming toward the water's edge, but it didn't make the water's edge. And I remember saying to myself, it doesn't reach the shore. Like, it's not reaching the shore. I just had this inner feeling like something's not right. And I said to Glenn then, look, I feel like there's not been a lot of movement. I don't want to be like a hypochondriac. Maybe something's wrong. So we went back home we called the hospital. I said, look, come in and we'll just have a check. And we were halfway through making dinner. I said, oh, okay, let's make a check. I remember driving to the hospital, just reading my social media, thinking everything's fine. But I think in the depths of my heart, I knew it wasn't. I was just choosing to ignore that. And I think that probably is why I looped back in self-blame. But even if I'd known at that moment, it would have been too late. So we arrived at the hospital and they did an ultrasound scan and there was a heartbeat. And it was that moment that, and I think if anyone's ever experienced this, it's complete and utter disbelief. Just everyone's got it wrong. That can't be true. That can't be right. This can't be real. I said the whole night, this can't be real. This isn't real. Is this real? And that sense of just, like I said, the only way I can describe it is drowning. It really felt like I was underwater and I could not breathe. So we stayed in hospital overnight and I was induced to deliver him the next day. And I'm not going to explore that. Obviously, it was a very traumatic experience. But when we met him, it was like any newborn when you meet them. It's pure love. And I remember feeling like I've never been through a cyclone, but I can only imagine in the eye of the cyclone, this moment of complete stillness. So we walked through the chaos of the cyclone, arrived in this moment of complete stillness with our son. We had 24 hours with him in the hospital. And then I had to walk out of that hospital and leave him behind. And again, it was like exiting out of the next cyclone. Like the eye of the storm was this tiny place that we lived together for that 24 hours. And then it was feeling like we were spat out the other side. It was pretty horrible. And then, like I said, from there, it was this complete restructure of who I was and someone who was unable to cope. I used to be the sort of person that had it all together. I had nothing together, absolutely nothing. I could barely dress myself. So for anyone who's ever navigated this, if you're listening, my heart goes out to you 1,000 times over because it was such an unbelievably difficult period of time.
Yeah. And had you had a good pregnancy other than that?
Totally healthy. No problems at all. So there was something wrong with the cord apparently. And then I went down the rabbit hole of maybe I should have had more ultrasound scans. There were some signs that I was measuring small. I thought maybe I should blame the obstetrician, but that's the cycle I'm glad I didn't open because we can live in blame endlessly. Whether I was blaming myself or blaming the obstetrician or blaming the medical system or blaming, where does it go? So I went down I opened up that thought process for a little while and then interestingly had a dream that told me I actually need to, it's just dangerous. It's just a dangerous way to live is to be constantly in the loop of blame. And I'm not saying what's right or what's wrong, whether you should blame or should not blame, but I knew for myself that if I went down a blame pathway, it wouldn't serve me and it wouldn't serve anybody else or him. I kind of exited my thought process out of that in the end because in the end it doesn't change the outcome.
No. I know I did share with you when we met yesterday briefly that my mum actually had a full-term stillbirth, her first baby as well. Elizabeth, she was called, a little girl. I think it was quite different in the 70s, or 60s, it would have been actually early 60s, because she never even saw the baby. They never got to meet her or hold her, or they knew that she was giving birth to a baby that was no longer living. And they told her it was a little girl, but it was taken away and she never got to see her or hold her. And she always talked about the regret of that and how she wished she'd had the opportunity, I think, to connect with her in that moment. And she also said to me, and we always talked about her, actually. We always talked about her. And my mum actually lost another child who was 6, who was very poorly. So there was a lot of grief and loss in my family before I was born, actually. But we've always talked about, and she always said, oh, I wonder what she would have been like. And always talked about, I guess it makes you question lots of things when something so horrific happens, doesn't it? I know my mum always said, if there is a God, how could they take a baby? If there is a God, how could they take a child? And so it opened up a lot of questions in our house about the thought of past lives and reincarnation. And Mum, I know, read a lot of books about the idea that we sign a soul contract to come to this life. And once you've completed whatever it is you've come to achieve, it's you go. And I think that was how, in her mind, she reconciled it in some way, was that particularly for Matthew, who was an older, he was 6. So she obviously said whatever he'd done, whatever he'd come to do, he'd done it, you know. And I think that was how, for her, she managed that grief. But I think for never having seen that Elizabeth, that first baby, was a real tough one. And so for you, obviously having that moment in the hospital must have been very important, because you got to meet him. And
Important. And I can't imagine what your mum went through, and I know that that's what they used to do. They thought it was better for you to not see, and it's like, no, it's far worse, because you come out the other side and your body knows you have given birth. Like, there are signs that you've given, everything in you knows you've given birth. And to not have a little one there is physically, physiologically, emotionally confusing. To have that time with Baxter in the hospital, I am forever grateful for that. And of course, on the flip side, there are things that we didn't do that we found out afterwards in pamphlets. You should dress your child. You should take more photos, take a video, hold them. There were things that it's like, I wish I'd known that. I never dressed him. I wish but where does it stop? I wish forever that he. So I am very, very grateful, because for that 24-hour period, that moment, like I said, it was like being in the eye of a cyclone. It was complete stillness. And it's these moments that actually get us through our grief in the end, is recalling that small 24-hour period is like something that I would recall when I was really struggling. And so yeah, I feel for your mum and for women in the past. And even women now, we never quite get it right, and how to do it, but it's to acknowledge and spend time with someone who's passed. And I think your mum's idea around our soul's purpose is something that I've had to adopt as well, because like you say, the question of if God was really, like, what sort of God does this? And I remember Glenn asking me this in hospital. There is, like, how can there be God if this is happening? And I think that's a question that happens to a lot of people who lose children, is the I guess the complete injustice of it. But here's how I have navigated that. And I guess I'm kind of a sciencey person by training, by default, but I've also always been interested in energy, the universe, sort of things beyond our imagination or beyond our realm. And I really do believe that there is a lot out there that we don't know or understand, or it's beyond our understanding. But here it is really, is that energy can't be gained or lost. So in physics, if I take a saucepan of water and put it on a stovetop and heat it up, the water evaporates. So the little molecules go up into the air. The water doesn't disappear, it just changes form. So I believe that energy, no matter where it is or where it comes from, it doesn't disappear, it's not vanished. It's just changed form. So I began to look for Baxter in different forms, in different ways, over the next 2 or 3 years. And I saw a lot of him everywhere, and I still do now. And that's because I hold a firm belief that energy can't be lost. No one can disappear. Their energy just transforms into something else. It's up to us as to how we see it.
yeah, I mean, I completely agree. A lot of the work I do centers around energy. I mean, what I do, I say I peddle energy. That's what I do. I sadly lost my mum a year ago. Well, I've lost both my parents in the last 12 months, actually, but that's a separate story. But I was with my mum when she died. And I can honestly tell you that I felt like I saw her soul leave her body. And that might sound strange to some people, But just like you said, that soul spark, whatever that energy is that makes us us, that makes us a human, a person, a personality, the electricity that fires the neurons in our brain. Like we know scientifically, like you just said, that that cannot be created or destroyed. So it has to go somewhere and change form. And it's invisible when it's in us. So it blows my mind that people can't think about how it's still invisible when it leaves us. It's just not physically in us. And it's a belief that actually I was brought up with from being a really young age. I think because these conversations around reincarnation and soul purpose and everything were always on the table. It was always discussed, debated, given as a definite or anything like that. But it was always questioned and welcomed because Mum needed that, I think, to process her grief, basically.
We remain curious means that we're open to, like, we actually don't know for what happens. And so when we remain open and curious, we can find ourselves landing on ideas that help us resourcefully get through. And so if someone chooses a religious method to get through, then if that's helping you, then use that. Let's step into that. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I really resonated with the idea around physics, actually, is that energy just cannot be gained or lost. It just transforms. That's it. It's a very simple physics equation. And so that idea of, okay, if he has transformed, in what way is he showing up for me? And I started doing things, this is going to sound a bit crazy now, but I started doing things like imagining if I were him. I remember eating a strawberry in my kitchen and just taking a bite. And then I thought, no, I'm going to take a bite like he's trying it for the first time. And so I started to bring parts of him within me and also seek parts of him outside of me. So what part of him lives within me now is someone who remains curious, like a child. Is like, oh, what does a strawberry taste like? And when you taste it like that for the first time, it tastes amazing. And so I started stepping into, this is after a period of time, of course. This is after sitting in the ditch for a while and being buried underwater and not coping, all of those things. But when I stepped into the understanding that, look, maybe he exists within me, and if it does, then what would that look like? And maybe his energy has transformed in some way externally, and if it has, then where is it and what does it look like? And these are the things that helped guide me through the next rebuilding phase.
Yeah, for sure. I know you told me that your family did manage to come to the hospital to meet him, and that must have been a really special moment as well. How did that manifest, inviting them? Because you must have had to tell them.
Yeah, well, we had to tell, this is hard because I actually don't really know, because I was quite delirious, as in, delirious is probably not the word. I was in so much shock that and like anyone that has a very shocking experience, so I had PTSD signs afterwards. There's moments that you really have no memory of. So I do know that my husband, when we found out the night before there was no heartbeat, my husband called the family members. I don't know when he made that call because I don't remember him ever leaving the room, so I don't know what happened there. And his parents showed up the next day before I delivered. My parents had to fly up, so they arrived after delivery. And again, it's all a bit of a blur, but I do remember the next day we had a blessing and the whole family was there, and that was a really special moment. So it was really great that they all had the chance to actually see, because I think one of the things with stillbirth is, neighbors and friends see you pregnant one day and not the next. Oh, it seems almost not real. Like, oh, they just lost something and it was just a pregnancy. It's like, well, no, it was actually a child. And so to have at least the family to have met him was a really beautiful experience for us, and something that I'm grateful for here.
I know my mum talked about how she was put on the maternity ward after. And back then they kept you for 10 days.
Oh, my goodness.
So she was kept on the ward with women who'd had their babies.
Oh.
Because I think she'd had some medical complications as well. So afterwards. So, and she talked about that, the pain of that to me
Wow. That would
in
be
later,
horrendous.
yeah. And she said to me that a part of her died with that
For sure.
child, and that she just was never the same again, really.
No.
Um,
And that's, I guess, what I alluded to in the beginning is that part of you does die. And for me, I didn't recognize myself anymore. So I wasn't just grieving him and the life that I thought we'd have and all of these things. I was also grieving myself. Like, who am I now? I'm this shadow of a person. And part of it in that point is to recognize, I guess, although it felt like I had this empty hole in my heart, it's making decisions from there as to how do I want to fill this space? If I am this empty shell, how do I want to recreate myself? And how do I make clear minded and open hearted decisions to be able to create the person I want to become through this? Now, that's a question that I asked the next day. A question came to mind a year or 2 years down the track where it's like, okay, I'm learning all of these things about how to regulate emotions, how to calm stress, and how to start putting my life back together. It's never going to be what it was, but what is it that I want to create from here? And these are the questions that mean we move through grief. And like I said, grief is many faces and forms for us. It's the relationship breakdown, it's the divorce, it's moving through that tipped out jigsaw puzzle where you feel like part of you has died, and it has. And with every death, there is an opportunity for a birth of a new identity. So part of it for me was starting to choose what is the identity of myself now. And that took some time. That wasn't an overnight decision, but it was really starting to choose, how do I want to show up in the world?
and I know you mentioned to me when we first spoke that it's a strange kind of grief, losing a child through stillbirth, because you feel very isolated because there's so many people in your world that haven't met
Yes.
Baxter, and so for them, they're grieving something they've never known. There wasn't a personality to grieve. There wasn't a connection, a bond for them. So it's a difficult one to navigate that, right? It must have been very isolating for you.
Yeah, I think all grief is isolating in a way because it's invisible. It's an invisible pain in your heart. Like if you have a broken arm, you've got a plaster cast and everyone knows what's going on. But so you walk down the street and people can say, oh, she's broken her. But I was walking down the street with this big empty hole in my chest and no one could see it. And I was still trying to navigate and figure out how to communicate, how to have a conversation. What do I do when someone asks me if I have children? I'd fall apart. And so this is the thing with grief, especially with stillbirth, I think, because it's very much like you do feel like no one's met your child. But I think that's relevant to all grief, actually, because grief is an invisible pain. Like I said, unlike a broken leg or a broken arm, and I'm a physio, so I'm very used to talking in those terms, but it's no one can see what's going on. And I think navigating that isolation, we have two choices. We can choose to remove ourselves and to isolate even further and feel like no one understands. Or we can take a breath and understand that probably no one will ever understand. And that's okay. And I'm going to choose to fulfill my heart in some way and how to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Were there things that people said that were unhelpful
Yeah.
or
All the time.
helpful?
All the time.
Talk me through that. What did that
Yeah.
tell me?
All the
If
time.
you have a friend that's going through this, what don't you
Yes. Here's
say?
what not to say.
Yeah.
Don't say everything happens for a reason, because at that point in my life, I felt like slapping them. It's like don't tell me this. Like I had one woman that said, "Don't worry, you'll have another baby." Now I thought to myself, I really wanted to punch it. And I thought to myself, if I had a 2-year-old child that died, you would never say that to me. But you're only saying that because you never met him. Don't worry, things will get better. And it just, these are the sorts of comments like, don't worry, everything happens for a reason. It's a bit dismissive. And here's my take on this now, is that I now understand that we don't do grief very well as a society, as human. We are so used to celebrating wins, accomplishments, gains. You bought a house, great job. You got married, great job. You gained a career, great job. When we lose things, oh, now what do I say? I don't know. I don't know what to say. And so what I realized is that many of the people that said things that were probably less than helpful were really just doing their best. They're just doing their best. And I had people that walked across the street to avoid me, and that hurt. And the other part of me was like, they just don't know what to say. And I get it. And really the best thing to say is to say, there are absolutely no words that I can share right now, but I'm sending you all my love.
And I'm here
Because
if you
there
need me.
are no words. There are no words.
Yeah.
And so the understanding that I have now, it was very hurtful at the time. I remember feeling hugely resentful when someone said everything happens for a reason. I'm thinking, God, seriously? Now that's the sort of thing I can reflect on down the track. However, at the time it was painful, but now I look at it with empathy. As a human beings, we are not good with grief. We get awkward. We try to fix it. We want someone to feel better. I want you to feel better, so I'll tell you, don't worry, it's okay. It's like, no, just say, I don't know what to say. Is even better than that. And so we can't fix it. We can't make someone feel better, but we can be there for them and we could just send them love and think about some of the practical things, like what could I do practically to help Niky right now? I could bring around some dinner. So we had some friends that brought around food, all sorts of things like that. That was great. But I've just concluded that I have to review all of those comments with complete empathy and compassion now, because do you know what? Before this happened to me, I probably would have been that person.
Yeah.
Said, worry, everything happens for a reason. Take a vitamin B and go for a run, you'll be fine. Like, seriously, that's probably, well, I wouldn't have said that, but I probably wouldn't have.
In your mind, you were thinking it.
Exactly. I would have gone, get on with it, you're fine. So ultimately, one of the gratitudes I have is that I now have a completely different understanding of how difficult it is to get through these life messy moments. And the kind of work that it takes, which is why I created what I do with my coaching program, the kind of work that it takes to really step through and make sure that you step through the other side, not by running away from your emotional pain, but by integrating it and choosing to transform yourself into something that you need or want to as a result of all of this. So like I said, I now review some of these moments with empathy and compassion.
I know you mentioned about living in grief versus living with grief, and what the difference is. So when do you feel like that shift happened for you? I mean, it must have really affected your relationship with your husband at the time. I mean, I can't imagine how that kind of strain on a relationship.
We are very, very lucky in that, yes, it was difficult, but we were lucky in that when I call it the pendulum swing, it was almost like when I was having a bad day crawling around the floor crying, he would pick me up and look after me. And then when he was a mess, I had the strength to look after him. So we kind of oscillated in our meltdown moments. And I'm very grateful for our relationship, I think. And again, it's looking for what has transformed in a positive way as a result of this experience. I have a better relationship now than I ever had with him. And I know I'm one of the lucky few, because many parents don't survive the emotional chaos. And here's what I know about living in grief or living with grief. I think initially you have to live in it to fully experience the pain of it. And it sounds hard, but there were times where I was just like, I just don't think I can bear this pain. I don't think I can. But the moment I lay down and just said, okay, just let it wash over me, just overcome me. Okay. I'd be, I don't want to say hysterical, but I would be a few minutes, and then it would pass, and then I'd take another breath and realize I didn't die from that. Actually, okay, I can keep going with the next step. So I think initially you have to live in grief to fully experience it. Otherwise, you're running away from an emotion. But here's also what I know is that if you learn ways of building emotional capacity. So I talk about capacity a bit like a plate. So if you can imagine you're at a buffet and you're putting food on your plate, what you want is a really big plate. Otherwise, you can't carry what life serves you. So you have to be able to find ways to build emotional capacity, which means you can experience and feel grief or sadness. At the same time, you can also have joy and appreciation on your plate. Now, straight after what happened to us, my emotional capacity was the size of a tiny saucer, and grief, sadness took over the whole plate. There's no way I could feel anything else. And I thought I would never experience joy again. That's what I thought. And then even when I did, I felt guilty about that. And so learning how to regulate my emotions, learning how to build my emotional capacity meant my plate got bigger. And that even though I would experience moments of sadness, I could also hold joy, appreciation, gratitude on the same plate, which means I live with grief rather than in it. So
That's a great analogy. Yeah. While you were talking then, I was just thinking about, for you, obviously, you had a very physical experience in this, in that you carried Baxter, you grew him inside you. You had to physically go through the act of giving birth and holding him. But the man in this scenario, for your husband, obviously, he must have felt helpless in that scenario. I can't imagine it. And I wonder how that affects his grieving process in terms of not having to have physically gone through it. It's happened to him, but not to him, if that makes sense. How do you think that manifested for him?
I think in a way it's almost harder for men. I remember Glenn saying in the very early days with sort of upset is that he can't fix this. And I think men have an innate feeling of wanting to fix things, which is what drives women crazy sometimes, because sometimes we just want to talk about our problems without them telling us how to fix it, because it's like, I don't care about fixing it. I just want to download on you. But men have an innate need to fix, and this, like, it really broke because it's like there's no fixing. And ultimately, like I said, I'm super grateful and super lucky to have met a man that has both masculine qualities and some intuition within him. So he really took on the role, I guess, of looking after me as well as looking after the grieving process. So he was kind of I guess we became a bit codependent for the first year. Like, we needed each other, but he was really of the mindset of, I'm just looking after you right now to help. And that was his way of fixing as best he could, not to try and make it better, but to try and support me. And so I'm sure that there are moments that he had where, this is going to sound really strange, but he expressed at one point almost, I'm going to say the word jealousy. It's not jealousy, but just, you got to carry him. I didn't get to do that. So there's these weird things that come up that way. And I remember him having that conversation with me at one point. Not that it changes anything, but I think for men, they grieve in a very different way because they like to fix. And that makes it harder because it's not fixable.
So interesting, isn't it? That, like you say, it's not jealousy exactly, but almost a little bit of resentment that you got that time with him that he didn't get, yeah.
Well, it's a fleeting expression that he had. I don't think it's something that really overtook him, but like, you experience so many feelings through grief. There's resentment of what should have been. There's resentment of other people. How come they get to? How come I didn't get to? So there's jealousy there. Then there's the sadness. I went through a lot of anxiousness, like really anxiety feelings. That's because my nervous system was so kind of off kilter, which is why I spent so much time afterwards figuring out how to manage my own nervous system, which is now what I teach. But those feelings, A, is learning how to build emotional capacity so you can hold all of those feelings, but then B, learning to navigate and I guess steer is maybe the best word I can use, your own nervous system, so you're not constantly going into these feelings of anxiousness. But all of those feelings in a big melting pot, that's what grief is.
And how did you, first of all, I think I applaud you for being able to take the time for yourself afterwards, because I think lots of people don't. I know a lot of doctors advise you just to go again as quickly as you can. Like, I know that's what I have friends it's happened to where they've just said, you've just got to try again as quickly as possible. And I actually don't think that's good advice. I think you need to take time to sit with yourself and process what's happened. How long did it take for you to feel like did you want to try again, or was it
We had what I call the atomic bomb of grief, where with Baxter's passing, it felt like the whole world had a bomb through it, and everything. It was just a completely desolate space where nothing was together. So I had that experience. Now, we also then, a year or 2 years down the track, started an IVF journey to conceive again. And we also ended up in an adoptive process as well to try and have a family. And none of these things came to fruition for us. And this is what I call, for me, the slow closing door of grief. If you can imagine a light in a room and the door just very slowly closes, it is the slow realization of, oh, this is actually not going to happen for us at all. And it wasn't like an atomic bomb. It was a slow slide into depletion or sadness. At the same time, I was better equipped now, having navigated my first wave of grief, of like, okay, I need to figure out, and this is the work of Dr. Demartini that I share with women, is figuring out how can I transform my perceptions of this loss? Because you can't lose anything without gaining things. So I'm losing my capacity to have a family. What am I gaining? Okay, my physiotherapy business grew because I used a whole stack of communication skills on my Brené Brown training. I suddenly had a team of 15 that were like my family. So I'm unable to have children, and now I've got a family of team members that I run in my business. And now I consider it the same in coaching. One of my dreams was to be able to teach Baxter how to ski. Like, you think about teaching kids things and you want to be able to share, but I teach every single day. I still do this. I just do it in another form. So part of it is figuring out through loss, whether it's someone's passed away or an opportunity has a closing door or a relationship is changing. What is it that you feel that you've lost, and where is it turning up somewhere else? Because things can't be lost without being transformed or gained somewhere else. So even though that experience, I guess, of losing that opportunity was hard, I was better equipped with the tools and resources that I now share every single day in how to regulate my emotions, calm myself down, and recognize that this perception of loss can be changed by me, and how to do that, and then how to start steering myself toward what I really value most in life. Because life steers us to who we need to become. And I really feel that all of these experiences have steered me to become someone different. And that is to help women through life's messy moments, to be able to start leading themselves with an open heart and a clear mind and calm confidence and all the things that we think that we've lost in these messy moments, but it's really a rebuilding that's happening.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think in that moment, what came up for me when you were talking was the fact that there's a navigation of what society deems to be normal in terms of you get married, you have children. And so there's not an expectation by others, but an expectation in yourself of what you thought life was going to look like. And then grieving that because you're grieving the life that you thought you were going to have versus the life that you've now got. And having to figure out what that looks like now. And coming to terms with that. So it's not just a grief in terms of that loss, is it? It's a loss of the future life.
100% correct. Because we all create, whether we want to or not, consciously or subconsciously, we have an idea in our minds of what our life might look like. And that's, like you said, it could be society, the way you've grown up, your upbringing, your school, your teachers, your family. They all implant ideas of what life is going to look like. And sometimes that eventuates and sometimes it really doesn't. And when it doesn't, you now have to grieve the loss of the future that you thought you'd have. At the same time, if you get really present and go, I'm going to create a life that I can become and start to create a life that I really want. And what does that look like? And very often I found, especially I found in my own journey, but with the women I work with, we sometimes lose what it is that is most important to us, whether we're giving to other people too much, or whether prioritizing everybody else for so long. And when we reach this crossroads moment, like a divorce or something that's gone wrong, we we suddenly ask ourselves, what is actually important to me? And for some women, it's like, I actually don't know anymore. And that's the perfect moment. That's like, okay, great. Now we're going to dig deep and find what that is. And I had to do that for myself. It's like, okay, I'm not going to have this picket fence and these two kids and this family that I kind of grew up believing from Disney movies that that's what happens. But if I dig deep and really find what it is in my life that brings me fulfillment, then how can I step forward toward that and give myself permission to do that? Let go of the ideas of what should be. And this is part of emotional regulation, is understanding I have to let go of what I think should be. And I can start to then create a life that is aligned with what it is that I value or what it is that brings me fulfillment. Speaking is one of them, would you believe? But teaching is also another one of them. And as long as I'm aligned with that, then I know that I'm okay. Whatever the outside picture looks like is going to be different, but I'm actually going to be okay within my heart.
And I think it's about purpose. It's about,
Very much so.
I mean, I know it's so cliche to say understand your why, but it's
true.
It's true. Unless you know why you want to do something and actually spend the time to be present and sit and think, what is it that I'm doing here? Why am I here? What is my purpose? If I'm not going to have that, then what am I going to have instead? And why is that important to me? And I think if you can reconcile that, it's almost like the magic ingredient, because
Absolutely.
you all of a sudden you go, oh, that's alignment. You're right. To be in alignment and to feel that sense of purpose. And like I said to you, I feel like I've lived many lives within this life. And the only way I can reconcile that within myself is that each point of time where something's changed, my purpose has changed because my circumstances have changed. And it's taken me a long time to get to that point where I'm okay with that. I spent a long time grieving my original career. I then spent a long time feeling guilty because I have two children, but they weren't planned. Certainly not at the point that I had them. I had them younger than we intended. And that changed everything for me because it took my purpose, my original purpose, away from me. And I spent years reconciling that within myself. And I think I've probably only really come to terms with it in the last two.
I love that share. And here's what I think with that is that our purpose and our alignment changes throughout our lives. Like what's important and is purposeful for a 5-year-old is going to be very different to a 50-year-old. So we have to be open to these moments that change us and have to be open to say, actually, life is redirecting me. What is it within me that I need right now? Where do I need to steer myself? And I have to give myself permission to make a change. Because here's what happens to a lot of the women that I work with is that we forget that we can choose. We forget that we have permission to choose ourselves. We have permission to live a life of fulfillment, and we can do that. But we have to be selfishly choose ourselves to start with. But it's giving yourself permission to let go of what you thought should be. And that's not easy. I'm saying it in 2 sentences like it just happens overnight. It's not necessarily that easy, but it's worthwhile.
Well,
if you give yourself permission.
I agree. There's 2 words, shame and failure, because we think we failed and there's shame in that. And so we beat ourselves up. We don't want to talk to people. We hide ourselves away. We don't want to tell people that we've changed our mind. But why is there shame in that? Why are we not allowed to change our minds? Why does it matter? I choose this. I've made a decision to do this. And I do get it. People come to me and go, what are you doing now? What is this? You've got a podcast now. Why? Like, when did that happen? When did you decide to do it?
Because I choose to.
Because I choose to. Why not? It's fun. I like it. It's a passion project. It brings me so much joy. I have really, really important, amazing conversations that might just help somebody or change somebody's life because I'm talking to real people about things that really matter. Real life, not celebrity, real life.
So I love doing this and stepping into something that brings you joy and passion. And it is the people who are, I guess, have an expectation of us, don't want us to change. It's like, but we're forever changing, we're forever unfolding. And giving yourself permission to choose your joy and to choose your fulfillment, and knowing that that might change in 5 years' time, it might be something new, and that's okay. You're allowed. Yeah, exactly.
Your decision. I love saying that to people. You can choose. It's up to you. You can do whatever you want. And they go, oh, it's like no one's ever said it. You know? And how beautiful is that we're not taught in school that we are the masters of our destiny. Our minds create our reality. We can do whatever we want. It's up to us. If you want to just ditch everything and go and do something else, why can't you?
Yeah.
Why does it matter? Yes, and it affects money and it might affect, yes, there might be consequences, but ultimately, if that's what you want to do, just do it.
Exactly.
You know,
This is, I guess, the deep realization I had right at the beginning. We talked about, that moment of when that friend called me and said, would you like to come to that retreat? I had all these hesitations, like, is a grieving woman allowed to go to a yoga retreat? Like, is this the normal thing? What will people think? What will I think? Does it feel normal? Like, and then it's, in the end, it's about, I'm giving myself permission to do that. I have permission. I don't have to always give to other people. I can give to myself. And it's not to exclude my giving to other people, but when I give to myself and include myself on my own plate, it means I have more to give. And so part of it is that real decision of, I'm worthy of love, I am worthy of fulfillment, and I can actually give myself permission to choose.
yeah, I completely agree. Not that we like to give advice, because obviously advice can be dangerous, as you said. But if there is anybody listening to this who's in the depth of a loss like a stillbirth, what would you say? What would you advise them? What would help?
Thank you for asking. There's probably lots of things I could say, but the thing that I will share is, I don't know if you've ever been whitewater rafting before. Have you ever been whitewater rafting? I've been whitewater rafting in New Zealand. And it's fun. So you have like a group of people in the raft, you've got a person at the back, and they teach you how to steer left and steer right. And if you're going over rapids, they teach you to pull the oar in and get into the boat. So you go over the waterfall or whatever it is, and then once you're downstream a bit, you pop back up and you start steering. So in my experience of grief, I like to say that there are actually 3 phases of grief. I'm not a big advocate of the 5 phases. It never really made sense to me. I'd like all these different things, but to me there were really only 3 main phases. That first phase is almost like going over the waterfall in the life raft, and the only thing you can do is hold on. Like, you can't steer left or right. You can't make decisions. You can't, it's really just about getting through to calmer water. So if you're in the thick of it right now, give yourself some kindness. I used to hate it when people told me that, but I'm going to say the words that I hated, and that was, be kind to yourself. Allow yourself to just anchor into the life raft, hold on to the oar, and know that you probably can't steer. Take a breath and just know that calmer waters are coming. And so for me, that first phase of grief is really just about holding on and just getting through each day as best you can, and giving yourself permission to be messy, because it's messy. And then from there, it's about, okay, now I'm going to get up in the life raft. I'm in calmer waters. I still feel very lost, but I'm now going to start paddling if I can. And so that second phase of grief feels like hard work. It feels like I'm trying to get better, but I don't know how to get through. I'm not, I'm not feeling like I'm drowning each day, but every day feels heavy. And so for me, I live at the beach. It really felt like climbing this steep sand dune that just like 2 steps up, 1 step back, have a good day, then not a good day. And for me, like climbing any mountain, if you can stop along the way and look at the view and look at how far you've come, that is one thing that's really beneficial in that phase of just going, look, I know it's hard, keep going, but rest when you need to. Admire how far you've come, appreciate what's around you, and eventually you come to a point of surrender and gratitude. And that's the final phase of grief, I believe, is surrender to what is. This is what is. And I'm going to hold complete gratitude in my heart for my experience and the way I have grown and navigated. And yes, it's been messy. And yes, it's been hard work and a lot of sweat and tears. And now reaching a point of gratitude is where we arrive when we surrender. So that is my, yeah, if you want to call it advice, I don't know if it's really advice, but just to describe the typical phases that I see. The women that I tend to work with are the ones that are climbing the steep sand dune. I'm like, okay, I'm climbing out. I don't know how to go forward. So that's where I tend to step in.
Yeah, and I don't think it has to be advice necessarily, but it's acknowledgement, isn't it, of what it feels like, and that you're not on your own. Was there any truth that you had to face in going through all of that you wish you hadn't, but that changed everything for you? I mean, from what we've talked about, I mean, that question I wrote before knowing that obviously you hadn't been able to go on to have a family. But I guess that facing up to the truth of that must have been the final turning point, really, for you.
You know what? I actually think if I think about moments of truth, here's what I really feel has been the moments, I'll call multiple moments of truth, is recognizing that the way I was operating in my life before Baxter was never sustainable. I was operating in the realm of the mind. I was running a business. Here's the KPIs, here's the procedures, here's the processes, here's the research, here's how you do it. It's black, it's white, and then go for a run and get yourself on track. Get it together. That's who I was. And what I've realized now, the real truth is that life, and like I work with a lot of business leaders who are navigating their own grief in the background, is really leading yourself as well as leading others, is about getting your mind and heart coherent and on track, which means I had to have my heart broken to open it. And when I have an open heart, I have compassion, I have empathy, I can communicate, I can still stay within my own, I'm going to say within my own body, because sometimes when we have empathy, we lose ourselves to other people, but I can have a strong boundary around that. But it's that sense of I need both my mind and heart operating and pointing in the same direction. I didn't think that my emotions and my heart were so important. Well, I don't even know if that's true. I think I just buried it. Just get on with it. And so my real truth through all of this is recognizing that our hearts, our emotions, our ability to connect with others, having courageous conversations, these are all skills, and our emotional capacity is essential to be able to move forward and lead ourselves through life, let alone lead others. So I work with women who lead, and it's like learning to lead yourself first. I think we can quickly shut the heart down and think that that's not important. And, well, I'm so wrong about that. So my truth was really learning that.
The alignment of mind, body and soul, isn't it? And operating as a whole being, not as one thing. So what's Baxter's legacy?
That's a hard question. Weirdly, that's a hard question. I think his legacy is for me stepping into a different version of myself, and I carry him with me. So every time I coach a woman, every time I run a retreat, and I see the transformation in women, it's the ripple effect that I know is Baxter. And it was really beautiful on my last retreat that I ran. I had 14 women together, and we go through, I call it a resilience retreat, because it's really designed to help women figure out, how do I manage emotions? How do I conquer depletion? How do I manage stress when life's been messy in any form? And then how do I find clear direction for myself that is aligning my mind and heart? And how do I manage my state and move through that? And by the time I got to the end of that retreat, a lot of women have huge aha moments and transformation. And I had this beautiful woman that stood up at the last dinner and made a toast to Baxter, and it made me cry. But it was just this heartwarming moment of realizing that everything I've learnt is because of him. And everything I share is because of him. And so the ripple effect and the legacy is the change that happens in other women when they realize, I can step into an open heart and a clear mind with calm confidence despite my circumstances, and I can let go and surrender of what's no longer serving me. That is his legacy. So that's what I see. But it was a beautiful moment on retreat.
Oh, that's just gorgeous. I love that for you. I'm so happy for you that you have that. So if anybody wants to work with you, if anyone's listened to this conversation or they want to get in contact with you or they've been inspired by anything you had to say and want to come on a retreat or whatever, how do they contact you? I mean, we'll make sure everything's in the show notes, obviously, but
Yeah, it'll be in the show notes. But you can go to my website, which is just nikyhamilton.com, and it's spelled Niky Hamilton. I've also got a book. So if you're living overseas and can't come to a retreat, I have a book, and the book is called Selfish Leadership: How to Lead Without Losing Yourself, the Rise Up Guide. So it takes women through, I guess, a step-by-step pathway of figuring out how to lead your life without losing yourself in the process due to your circumstances. So it shares a lot about our story. So that book is available on my website, but I also have online coaching. So I coach women in groups, I coach women one-on-one, all via Zoom. So that way I can guide them through that step-by-step clear process to find fuel, to conquer depletion, and to find direction again, and to be able to lead themselves and others despite the messiness of life. So you can contact me on my website, and the other socials will be in the show notes as well.
amazing. Niky, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you giving up your Friday evening to talk to me and, such an important conversation. And I'm so grateful for your honesty. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you. I've really loved our conversation. You've had some really great questions, and I've really loved connecting with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.